Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome to another crash course. Today's course is going to be on Vue.js. Now, I've had a lot of requests to do a video on Vue, especially in my React.js videos. A lot of you guys mentioned it. I also just completed an Eduonics course on Vue.js, so you may want to check that out as well. So before I begin, I just want to mention my website, traversymedia.com. It's actually not up yet. It should be live within a week or so. And it's going to include all of the recent YouTube courses and videos and maybe some extras. It's also going to include all of my in-depth premium courses by Eduonics. Alright, these free ones are a great start, but I'd suggest going more in depth with some of those courses. Some of them feature up to 12 different applications from scratch for something like 27 bucks, so it's well worth it. Traversy Media will also include all of the course code for all the videos, as well as some coupons, deals, and some other stuff. So check that out if you get a chance. One more thing before we start. There's a number of ways that you guys can help out the channel and keep these free courses and videos coming. As I mentioned, premium courses are a great way to learn all types of technologies and also help us out at the same time. You could donate a few bucks, even $1, anything is appreciated. And if you don't have any extra money to spend, that's absolutely fine. Just subscribe to the channel, leave some likes, comments, whatever you can do is fine. Alright, so let's get started. So what is Vue.js? It's defined as a progressive JavaScript framework that focuses on building user interfaces. And it's important to know that Vue works exclusively in the view layer of the application. So anything to do with the user interface. It doesn't care about the model or database or anything else, at least on its own. It was designed from the ground up to be incrementally adoptable, and this makes it very easy to integrate into existing projects and libraries. But at the same time, it's powerful enough to create advanced single-page applications, or SPAs. And these are applications that dynamically update the page as the user reacts to the app. Alright, there's also a vue-router that can be used, which we'll get into a little later. So how does Vue match up to some of the other many JS technologies out there? I know that the amount of them can be very overwhelming, and I've actually had many comments on my channels that asked me how do I keep up with all of these different frameworks and libraries, extensions, and so on. This by no means is an extensive comparison or pros and cons. I just want to show you some of the technologies that Vue is often compared to. So React.js is very close to Vue. They both work in the UI only, in the view layer. They both use a virtual DOM, which is basically a slimmed down dynamic version of the document object model, and it updates certain parts depending on different actions within the app. Alright, so they're both very reactive, they're both component based, they both have external libraries for routing. Vue is a little bit easier to use than React, but I think React is a bit more powerful. If I had to pick one, I'd probably say React, but that's just my opinion, and probably because I have a lot more experience with React. Angular 2 is another framework that Vue gets compared to. But Angular 2 is kind of a different animal altogether. It's not a UI library or framework. It's a complete framework, and it offers a lot more. It's made up of many different packages and modules, and this makes Angular a lot harder to learn, but obviously more powerful. Vue, however, does score higher in some benchmarks when it comes to performance, but it's also because it's a lot more lightweight. Ember is another more in-depth framework, and it would make more sense to compare Vue to just the template and the object layers of Ember. Vue does provide more reactivity, but Ember is also older, so that's kind of to be expected. Let's see, Knockout.js is another library, and it's based on the MVVM design pattern, or model view model. Vue.js isn't classified as MVVM, but it does work in a similar way. Knockout does have superior browser support than Vue in most frameworks. It actually works well with IE6, which is kind of amazing. Knockout does lack a full set of lifecycle hooks, though, and it is much older than Vue. The last two, which are Polymer and Riot, I've never used these, so I can't really say too much about it. I do know that Polymer was a source of inspiration for Vue.js, and Riot has a similar component-based model. Alright, so what does Vue.js do? What does it offer? It allows us to build reactive interfaces. So if we click a button or type some text, some other part of the application or the component can react to it. Declarative Rendering, which allows us to use dynamic variables. We can bind data, including two-way data binding from input elements, much like Angular 2 if you have experience with that. It also provides a large set of directives. Okay, and Angular 2 is famous for using custom directives, which do a lot of different things, which we'll go over. Template logic. Okay, so we can have if statements, we can have for loops right in our templates. Components and nesting. Components are obviously good for organizing your application. Event handling. There's something called computed properties, so if one thing changes, we can have something else compute some other custom function. CSS transitions and animations, and I apologize, that's spelled wrong. And also custom filters, so we can create filters that we can add to variables inside our templates. Alright, so installing and using Vue.js, there's a number of ways to do it. You could just include it right in a script tag. You can use the CDN and you can just go ahead and use it. But that's not really recommended for production. You can also install it using NPM, Node Package Manager. The way that I would suggest using Vue, and what we're going to do, is to use the vue-cli tool, which is a command line interface that implements Webpack, and it pretty much does everything for us. It comes with a dev server, is a simple command to build out our app for production. So we're going to look into that. You could also install it with Bower, which is a client-side package manager, but that's pretty similar to just including it in a script tag. It's just included on the client. Alright, so those are some of the different ways. So the vue-cli tool, this is basically the commands to get going. So first thing, you want to install it globally. So npm, obviously you need Node.js and npm. Install -g for global, and then vue-cli. And then to create a project, you just have to do vue init webpack, because you want to use the webpack webpack template, and then whatever the name of your app. Alright, then we cd into that folder and run npm install, which will install the rest of the dependencies. And then we can simply run the dev server with npm run dev. And then once you're ready to build for production, you can just do npm run build, and that'll create a dist folder with your application. Alright, so pretty easy workflow. Here's a very simple example, rendering the data to the DOM and using interpolation. So we have a div with the ID of app. And by the way, we're going to jump into code and I'm going to show you all this. I just want to give you some very, very simple examples of what's to come. Alright, so we have a div with the ID of app. And in here, we're using interpolation, which is basically a dynamic variable. So we're using this MSG with the double curly brace. All right, over here is where we have our Vue instance. We create a variable, in this case app, and we set it to new Vue. And then inside there, we can include an element that we want to attach it to. In this case, it's the ID of app. And then we have this data where we can put different values. So MSG we set to the string of hello world. So right here it would output hello world. All right, and it's as simple as that. So directives are special attributes with the v- prefix that does something to the DOM. Okay, they're all different. Reactively applies side effects to the DOM when the value of its expression changes. And this is the format. We have our element, could be any kind of HTML element, and then v- and whatever that directive ID. All right, and that can take in arguments, expressions, and filters. So here's some simple directive examples. This is an example of just basic interpolation without a directive, and we just saw that. We're just including the MSG variable. We could do the same thing here by using the vtext directive, which basically would just output whatever's in that MSG. vhtml would parse HTML tags for us. If we were just to use vtext, it would actually output the HTML tags themselves, which you probably wouldn't want. So you would use vHTML. And then the v-once directive is one-time interpolation, meaning that it's only going to output it once. If it changes, it's not going to change in this particular instance. We can also have conditionals and loops. So over here we have our data, and we have this show value set to true, and then we have users, which is an array of user objects. So over here we're saying in our paragraph tag, we're using the v-if directive. We're saying if show, so you can see it's true, then this will be shown. We can also have else, so v-else, this is not. So if I set this value to false, then this would show because it's false. All right, right here we also have v-show, which you can use similar to v-if. So this will be shown if show is true. And then down here we have a v-for directive, which basically is a for loop. It's going to loop through these users, and we want to output the username. And we're going to get more in depth into this stuff. These are just very simple examples. Now we can also bind dynamic values to attributes. So in this case, we're binding to the class attribute, and we're actually saying that if this right here is active true, then we want to apply a class called active. All right, if we set this to false, this class won't be applied. In this case here, we're binding to the style. So we say active color red over here, and that's going to bind it to the color style, which will be red. Okay, so when you have a bigger application, you want to be breaking things up into components. To create a component, you can use view.component, name it, and then you can apply different things to it, such as a template. This should actually be a lowercase t. In this case, the template's just a string that says this is my component, and then to insert it, we can just put it in this format here. All right, components provide organization and encapsulation. They're reusable, and they can be separated into their own separate view files if needed. So some additional tools and plugins to use with Vue. There's the vue-router, which I'll give you an example of. This is the official router, deeply integrated with the Vue.js core. We also have vue-resource, which is used for handling HTTP requests. Vue-async data, which takes care of asynchronous data loading. Vue-validator, which is a form validation plugin. Vue-dev-tools, which is an extension for Chrome, much like the React extension or the Angular extension, and then Vue-touch, which handles gestures using Hammer.js, which I've never actually used, but it is available. All right, so that's it for the slides. Let's go ahead and jump in and take a look at some code. All right, guys, so we're going to go ahead and jump in and install the Vue CLI and generate an application. So before we get started, you need to have Node.js installed. If you don't, just go to nodejs.org, go ahead and download it, install it. Really easy to get set up. I already have it installed, so I'm not going to go through that. All right, now if we go to vue.js.org and we click on Get Started, and let's see, click on this installation right here, it gives us the different ways we can install it. We could just use the CDN and include the script. But I want to do things a little more professional and, I guess, realistic. So if you were creating an application, you'd probably want to use the Vue CLI, all right, which is a really incredible tool for creating it, for developing with the dev server, as well as building it out with just a simple command. All right, so we're going to go ahead and install it. Okay, right here, npm install global Vue CLI. So I'm going to open up a command line. Okay, or open your terminal, whatever you're using, on whatever system you're using. And I'm going to go into, let's see, my projects folder. And this is where we're going to generate the app. But let's go ahead and install the Vue CLI tool. So npm install. Going to add the G flag, or you could do -- global, and then vue-CLI. All right, and I already have it installed, so mine may be a little quicker. Alright, so now that that's all set, we're going to generate an application by saying vue init and then webpack and then the name of the app, which I'm just going to call, let's see, just Vue app, I guess. Alright, so that'll generate an app. It's going to ask us a couple questions. Okay, so the project name, Vue app, that's fine. Description, we'll just say simple. I'll just keep the default, a Vue.js project. Author, that's fine. Enter. And then it's going to ask if we want to use ESLint. I'm not going to use that, so I'm going to say no. Same thing with Karma and Mocha. That's more advanced for testing and stuff. End-to-end tests, no. Alright, so now it should be set up. So we're going to cd into Vue app. Alright, and we want to run npm install. Okay, that'll install the dependencies that we need. Now, as far as dependencies, it's installing Webpack, some Webpack plugins, Babel, so that we can use ES 2015. It installs the presets, a whole bunch of stuff. All right, so now let's go ahead and add that to our editor. I'm using Atom, which is completely free if you want to check that out, or of course you can use whatever you want. I'm going to add that project to the folder. So let's see. What am I in? Projects and then Vue app. Alright, so if we look at package.json, you can see it installed Webpack, Webpack dev middleware, Babel, and a whole bunch of plugins. Alright, just a whole bunch of stuff that's going to help us build out and test and produce our application. Alright, so now that that's done, we can run our app. So we can run the dev server by saying npm run dev. And I think I'm going to get an error because it starts it on port 8080 by default. And yep, and that's being used on my machine. You probably won't get this unless you are using that port. So if you do get this issue and you want to change the port, we can go to build and then dev server.js, and this right here, this port variable, I'm just going to set this to port 8000 and save it. Alright, so then we'll go ahead and try to run that again, and that should open up on port 8000. Alright, so this is kind of the boilerplate sample application that they give you. Not much, just a logo with some text. Alright, so let's go ahead and open up the source, the src folder. That's where all of the stuff that we want is. And basically we have a main.js file. This is where we import Vue and we import our main app component. Alright, this is where the Vue instance is. We're saying new Vue, and the element that we're attaching it to is an element with the ID of app. The template is the app component that we're bringing in, and we also want to list the app component here. Alright, now if we look at the app component, it actually has a .vue extension, and it uses a template. Okay, so we wrap this in template tags. Down here is where the JavaScript goes. Basically, we're importing another component called hello, and we're exporting our default object with the name of the component, which is app. And then we want to include any subcomponents we're using, such as this hello one that we're importing. We want to put that in here as well. And then we just have some styling down here. Alright, so if we look at the template, we have a div with the ID of app, and we have this image that we're bringing in, which is this Vue logo, and then the hello component. Okay, so let's take a look at the hello component. Okay, so in the template we have all of this, which is all of this right here. Okay, that's what we're seeing right here. And same thing, we have to export it, and we're giving it a name of hello. And we also have some data. Okay, now when we're working with components, the data has to be a function that returns an object with our values. In this case, we have this MSG, which is welcome to your Vue app, and then that's going up here. Okay, we're using that interpolation and putting it in the h1 tag. Alright, and then we have some styling down here. Since we add this scoped to the style, that means that it's only for this component. Now I just want to do basically just some examples and some testing, so I'm going to get rid of this hello component and we're going to create our own. Alright, so let's go ahead and just delete this. Okay, and then inside app.vue we're going to just remove this hello, where we bring in that hello, and also this, and then get rid of the hello component tags up here. Alright, so if we go ahead and save that, it should auto reload, and we want to open up our console down here, make sure nothing's wrong. Alright, we can also get rid of the logo. Alright, so to create a new component, let's go ahead and create a new file in the components folder, and let's see, we'll just call this, let's call it test.vue. Okay, now in here we want to have our template. Okay, and let's create a div and we'll give it a class of test. And for now, let's just put an h1 in here and we'll say test. Alright, then down here we want to open up our script. And we want to say export default. And let's give this a name of test. And yeah, we'll just do that for now. And we'll have some style tags down here. And let's add scoped. Okay, and we'll go ahead and save that. And now we need to bring that into our main app component. So let's go right here and say import. Let's see, we want to import test from, and it's going to be ./components/test. Okay, so that'll bring it in, and then we have to add it down here in order to use it. And then let's put it right in here. Okay, so we'll go ahead and save that, and now we get test. Okay, now we're going to be working in this test component. So what we can do is let's replace this text here with let's say title. Okay, and then down here we can say, put a comma there, say data, and then we just want to return, and in here let's say title, and we'll say hello world. So if we go ahead and save that, we now get hello world. And of course we can put whatever we want down here. We could do an object, so let's say if we want user, and we'll set let's set first name to John and last name to Doe. Now I want this my Atom editor to look at this not as a plain text file but as an HTML file. Alright, that because we're using script tags and so on. Alright, so we have this user with a first name and last name. If we want to, we could go ahead up here and we could say user dot first name. Actually, I like that camel case better. Okay, save that, and we get John. Now we can also use the vtext directive if we want. So let's, for instance, we'll take this p tag and let's add v-text, and we'll set that to user dot first name. Save that, and we get John again. Okay, so these are both outputting John. Now if we have some HTML, let's for this hello world we'll put an h1 here, and let's save that. Now using actually, you know what, I want to get rid of this. So if I save that, you'll see that the h1s are actually showing up. Okay, if I wanted to parse this, what I would have to do is you know, what we'll do is we'll say span, and let's do v-html equals title. Alright, and you probably wouldn't want to do this. You'd want to actually just include the value and then wrap it in tags up here. But just to show you, this does work. Okay, if you want to actually parse HTML that's in these values. Alright, I'm just going to actually undo that to how we had it. Alright, so next thing I want to look at is conditionals. Okay, so let's put a comma right here and let's say active, and we'll set that to true. Alright, so let's go up here. Actually, you know what, we'll call it show name. Okay, so we have this show name and set to true, and what we'll do is let's get rid of that and wrap this, not wrap it, but inside the P here we're going to say v-if equals show name. So we save that and we get John, but if I were to go and set this to false and save it, it doesn't show. Alright, but at the same time we can do v-else. So v-else show name, and let's say, I don't know, we'll just say nobody. Save that and we get nobody. And we could also remove this altogether and just do v-else, and that should also work. Okay, if I change this back to true, save it, we get John. Alright, so now let's take a look at v4 and loops. So let's create down here. Let's see, we'll say items, and let's set that to an array. So we'll have a title, say item 1. This one will be item 2. And I apologize, I have a bit of a cold, so I apologize if I sound a little funny. And item 3. Okay, so we have this array of item objects. And if we want to loop through these up here, let's put in a UL. And in here we'll put an LI. And we want to add here a directive of v4. And we can say item in items. And then in here we'll say item dot title. Save that. And now we have a list with our items. Now we can do input binding as well, much like Angular 2 does, and Angular 1. So let's say we want to put an input up here at the top. We'll give it a type of text, and then we can add a directive called vModel, which works like ngModel in Angular, and let's say title. Okay, so, and we'll put a line break. We'll save that, and you can see it says hello world, and if I change this, you can see that whatever is bound to this title is also going to change. Okay, which is really cool and really easy. So now let's look at events. Alright, so I'm going to go down here and create a button. Now, when you work with events, there's a directive called vOn. Okay, so we want to say vOn, and then whatever the event, let's say click. Oops. Okay, and let's set this to, we'll say greet. We'll say greeting. Alright, so save that, and now we have a button, and it's saying property or method greet is not defined. So we need to go down here. We're going to go after where the data is and put a comma, and then let's say methods, and we called it greet. Actually, we'll go like this. Greet function, and let's do alert. We'll say hello. Okay, so we'll save that and click that, and we get hello. All right. We can also pass along parameters. So if we want, we can say hello world, and then down here we'll add greeting, and we'll say alert greeting. So now if we go say greeting, we get hello world. So let's create another text input. I want to add some events to a text input. We'll give it a type text, and let's say v-on, and let's say key up, and we'll set it to press key. Okay, and then down here in our methods, put a comma right here, and let's say press key. And let's do console.log pressed. Alright, so I go over here and I start to type, and you see we get pressed. I just want to put a line break right here. Okay, now if we want to get what we're typing into here, we can do that. Let's see, we want to pass along an event right here, and then we'll just console log e.target.value. Alright, and if you're familiar with Angular 2 or React, and you've seen some of those videos that I have, this works pretty similar. Alright, so if I start to type, you can see that it captures whatever's in there. Alright. Now we can also test for certain keys. So in a lot of cases you want, if they click enter while they're in there, you want it to behave differently. So if we say v-on, you can say key up, let's see, key up, and set that to, actually let's set that to dot submit, not dot submit, dot enter. And then we'll set that to enter hit. And then down here we'll create a function called enter hit. And then we'll console.log, and we'll say you hit enter. Alright, so now let that reload and start to type. And then when I hit enter, you'll see you hit enter. Okay? And you can do this with different keys. There's shift, tab, all the main keys you can use as well. Alright, now the next thing I want to look at is computed properties. Okay, so we can use this to basically watch certain things and have them update accordingly. So for instance, we have this input for, where is it, for the username. Oh, we don't have it. So let's create an input for the first name and the last name. Alright, so I'm going to put, I'll just put an HR here. I'm sorry if this is messy. I'm just trying to cover just all the basics. I know it's not really a functioning application, but I just want to give you good examples. So let's say we have an input. Actually, we'll put a label, and we'll say first name, and then an input, and we'll give that a type of text, and let's set the v model, and we'll set that to user dot first name, and then let's put a line break. And then I'm just going to copy that line. And then this is going to be for the last name. Okay, so we'll save that, and we can see we have John Doe. Now, let's say that I want to have something for, I want the full name. I want a property for the full name that will actually take both of these and add them together, but it will also update when I update one of these. So to set computed methods, we need to go down here. Let's go underneath this methods, and we're going to say computed. Okay, and let's say full name. Actually, we're going to set that full name to function. And what I want to do here is return this dot first name, and then we'll concatenate a space, and then we'll add on to that this dot last name. Okay, and then up here let's put an H3, and inside here we'll say full name. Okay, so if we save that, let's see, property or method full name is not defined on instance but referenced. Alright, so you know what, I know that the problem is two things. One, this N right here should be uppercase to match this, and also since it's in the first name and last name are inside a user object, we need to say this dot user dot full first name and last name. Alright, so let's go ahead and save that, and now you can see we get this John Doe. This is coming from full name, but if I were to edit this first name and say Jane, it also updates the full name. Okay, so if we change first name or last name, it edits the full name. So that is computed properties. Alright, so now what I want to do is talk about component properties. Okay, now if we look in our app.vue, we have this, our test component. Now we can make it so that we can add properties, for instance, say title equals something. Alright, now to prepare our component to be able to do that, let's go ahead down here and let's see. Let's go under name, and we're going to say props. Like that. Make sure you put a comma here. And let's have a property called, actually let's do a property called message. Alright, now you can define a default for the properties. We say default, and let's set that to we'll just set it to foobar, and you also want to define a type. Okay, so in this case this is going to be a string. You can define it to a number, a string, a function, object, whatever you'd like. Alright, and then let's go ahead and put this up here in, we'll say an H2, say MSG, save it, and we get foobar. Now since it's a property, we should be able to add it right here. If we say MSG equals, we'll just say hello, save that, and now it's hello. Okay, so we can now pass in properties to this component. Alright, so now that we've gone over most of the basics of Vue.js, I want to do something a little more useful than this, because right now we just have this testing component where we just have a bunch of just different functionality mushed together. It doesn't really do anything. So what I want to do is just create a very simple input form where we can add users. Okay, we'll add users to a list, and we'll be able to update the status of the user with a checkbox, and also be able to delete the user. So I'm going to create a new component for this. So in components, let's say new file, and we'll call this users.view. Okay, and let's see, let's just copy what we have in test, paste that in, and I'm just going to get rid of everything that's in the div inside the template. Okay, we'll change this to users, and then down here we'll change this name to users. We're going to get rid of the props. Okay, for the data we're going to clear everything out of this return and clear out all the methods and get rid of this whole computed thing. Okay, and we'll save that. Now let's go to app.vue, and we'll pass in here users, which we need to import, just like we did with test. Okay, and I'm going to get rid of this instance, this test tag right here, and let's put in users. Alright, so save that. And now let's go back to our users component and just say, let's put an h1, save that, and now we have our users component. Alright, and our test component is still available. We could go ahead and put that in right here if we want. It's all encapsulated in there. Okay, so I'm just not gonna use that for now though. So what we're gonna do is in the data we're gonna set users to an array. Okay, and let's see, we'll have a name. I'm not going to do a first name and a last name, just a name. And let's see, I just want a true false value here. Let's say registered, I guess. So registered, and we'll set these to, do I want registered? No, you know what, let's do contacted. Okay, so let's say it's a list of users that we want to contact, and we want to be able to mark them off if they're contacted or not. Let's give them an email. Okay, I'm kind of just winging this as I go along. So we'll have three users here. Let's say Steve Smith. And let's do, I don't know, we'll say Tom White. Okay, so we have these users. Let's print them out with v4, so we'll say ul. We'll do an li with a v4 directive. And that's going to be user in users. And then let's put out the user.name and user.email. Alright, and I'm just going to set this to an HTML file. Okay, so we want to have an input as well. Type equals text, and let's set vModel. There's a few different ways we could do this, but I'm just going to set vModel to new user dot name. All right, and then let's see, we'll give it a placeholder. And we'll just say enter name. Okay, let's put a line break, and whoops, we'll copy that. And then this will be the email. Oops, that's not that's not right. Okay, so this will be new user dot email. And then let's put a submit button. Alright, so let's save that. Add user is not defined, so let's go ahead down here. We'll go after the data. Actually, we already have the methods right here, so we'll say add user. Okay, and let's just do console log add. Okay, now it's saying property or method new user is not defined on the instance. It's talking about this here. So what we'll do is set in the data, let's just set new user to an empty object and save it. Okay, so now we have our form, and if we were to submit this, we get add. Now see how it flashes like that? That's because it's actually submitting the form, which we don't want. So we just want to pass along E right here, and then we're going to say E dot prevent default. Okay, so now if we submit, now it just stays with add. Alright, so what we need to do is just push that new user to our users. So we can do that pretty easily. We're just going to say this dot users dot push, and in here let's pass in an object with the name. We'll set to this dot new user dot name, and then email, which will be this dot new user dot email. Alright, and that should do it. Oh yeah, we need contacted as well, which will always be set to false at first. So contacted false. Alright, so now if we were to say Kevin, we'll say Kevin Williams and submit, there he is, Kevin Williams. Alright, now if we reload, obviously that's going to go away because we're not persisting, we're just working in the user interface. Now let's say we want a checkbox to mark off if the user's been contacted. So what we can do is go back up here, and where we have our list, let's put right here an input. We're going to give it a type of checkbox. We'll give it a class of toggle, and let's give it a v model of user dot contacted. Okay, and then what we want to do is let's see, we're going to wrap this in a span. What I want to happen is if we mark it contacted, I want a strike through to go through the text. Alright, so let's do span, and we're going to say colon class. We're going to bind to this contacted, and set that to user dot contacted. So basically what we're saying here is that if it's the user is contacted, then we want to give it a class of contacted. Okay, so let's save that. Alright, now in order for us to tell if it's actually being marked as contacted, we're going to add a line through for that class. So let's go down here and say dot contacted and set text decoration to line through. Okay, and there we go. So now when I mark them off, they get a line through. Now if we were persisting to a database, we would have to add some functionality for it to actually go to the database as well and mark that off as true, but again, this is just the user interface. So last thing we'll do here is delete. We want to be able to delete the user, so let's go right here and put a button, and we'll say v on click, and we'll set that to delete user, and let's just put an X. Okay, so that gives us a little button there. Now we have to create that delete user down here. So I'll go right here and say delete user. Okay, and let's see, we're going to need to just kind of to splice it out. So we're going to say this.users.splice, and let's pass in this .users.index of, and that's going to actually take in a user parameter, and then we just want to delete one. So we have to actually pass that in as a parameter. So up here, delete user, we'll pass in let's see, pass in user. Okay, that should work. Let's save it and click X, and you can see it deletes the user. Alright, good. So we can now read our users, we can delete them, we can update the status, contacted, and we can add them. Alright, so there's two more things that I want to get to, and that's the vue-router and the vue-resource. Okay, now these are external to the core Vue.js system, so we're going to have to install those. So we're going to start off with the vue-resource. We're going to Control-C to stop this, and then we're going to do npm install vue-resource --save. Alright, now let's just do run dev again. Okay, and what we're going to do is go into main.js, and we're going to have to bring that in. So right up here we'll say import vue-resource from vue-resource. Alright, now in order to use it, we have to run it through the vue.use middleware. So vue.use, and then we just want to pass in here vue-resource. Okay, and that's all we have to do in this file. Let's save it, and then we're going to go back to users. And the API that I want to work with is, I forget the exact domain name. JSON placeholder, this right here, jsonplaceholder.typecode.com. And if you look at right here, we can make a request to this URL, and we can get these users. Alright, so what I want to do is, let's see, we're going to go down here. Now, Vue.js has a set of lifecycle hooks where you can kind of plug into certain points in the rendering of the component. So we're going to use one called created. So we want to go underneath the methods, not inside of it, but right underneath. And we're going to say created. And this should run automatically. So just to test it out, let's say console log created ran. Alright, so if we save that and we go back and look in the console, you'll see created ran. So this is where we want to make our request. So since we enabled vue-resource, we should be able to say http.get, which works pretty much exactly like the Angular 2 HTTP module. Alright, so we're going to pass in the URL, which is this. And it's going to return a promise, so we're going to say .then. Okay, and then we want to pass in here a function. That's going to give us a response. And let's just do console.log response. Alright, so we'll go back. And now you can see we're getting a response. Actually, let's do response.data. And there we go. So we're getting all those users. Now what we want to do is put that into this users array. So we're going to clear all this out. Just make this an empty array to start to begin with. And then down here we'll say this dot users equals that response that's coming in. So let's save it, and there we go. Okay, so we get all those users. And we can delete them. They're not going to delete from their server, obviously. It's just from the interface, but we can still add them. All right. So that's how you use vue-resource. Now the last thing we're going to look at is vue-router. So let's go ahead and stop this again, Control-C, and we're going to say npm install vue-router --save. Okay, and then let's run our server again. All right, now we're going to do this in main.js, and what we're going to do is we're going to kind of bypass the main app component altogether. We'll create a router, then we'll be able to go to, we'll set our users for the home page, and then we'll set a test route /test to go to the test component. All right, so let's see, we're going to want to bring this in. So import vue, actually let's do vue-router from vue-router, and again we're going to have to add this. We're going to do vue.use and say vue dash or vue-router. Alright, and then what we'll do is set here const, set a variable called router, set it to new vue-router, and in here we're going to pass in the mode. Now I want this to I want to be able to just go to our URL and then /test or about or whatever it may be. So to be able to do that, we want the mode to be history. Alright, and then we're going to set the base to be a _dir name, and then we can create our routes, okay, which is an array. Oops, can't type today. Alright, now these are going to be, it's going to be an array of objects which will have a path. So let's say / for the home page, and we'll say component, we want to be not home, users. Okay, so we want users for the home page, and then we'll say path and say /test, and we want that to be the test component. So let's see, test. Now in order to use these, we have to import them just like we did with the app component, which we're not going to be using. So import users from, and that's going to be in components /users, and we're going to do the same thing for the test component. So let's say test. Okay, so now that should work. And then down here, we're going to change this up a little bit. We're going to pass in router. We're not going to use this L right here. We're going to get rid of that. And then for the template, we're not going to use the app component. Okay, we can get rid of that. What we're going to do here is put in a div with the ID of app. Okay, and I'm going to change these quotes to backticks so that we can use multiple lines. Just like that. So now we can put this on a separate line. Okay. And then in here, let's put our UL. This will be our navigation. Okay, and now to create our links, we want to use this router-link, and then we have this to attribute. So router link to, and we'll set that to /, let's say users, and then we'll close that up. Okay, let's copy that. Apologize for that banging. That's my son running around upstairs. And then this one here is going to be to test. We'll change that to test. All right, and then we need a place for this, for our content to output, so that's what we put right here, this router-view. Okay, so router view, just like that. And then finally we just want to add down to here dot money sign mount, and then pass in the ID of app. All right, so let's go ahead and save that. And let's look at the console. All right, let's see. Vue-router is not defined. Oh, you know what? This, let's see. This should be uppercase right here, like that. All right, so save that. And now you can see we have our users component. And if I click test, that shows our test component. Okay, it's a messy looking app, but that's not the point. The point is that we go over all the basics and fundamentals of Vue.js, and we've done that. We do have a warning telling us about case because we have our uppercase file names, but that's fine. I'm just going to leave that. So hopefully this helped you guys out. I know it was kind of meshed together and it was really quick, but we did cover a lot. So please hit that subscribe button, hit that like button if you can. Look into the course, maybe purchase the full course. I go into everything we went in through here, but in much more detail, along with some other stuff as well. So you may want to check that out. So thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.